Good morning, family. Cable Game 93, back at it again. Fresh off a couple days off. It was just a 4th of July holiday. The boy had 2 days off, which is rare. Normally, we only have 1 day off, which is Sunday. And most holidays, we don't even get off, depending on what company you work for. Some of the bigger companies, they go 7 days a week. Working for a smaller outfit now where you get the holidays off. So I was a little excited about that. But one thing about being a cable contractor, when you take off, it ain't no vacation days, sick days, none of that. It ain't none of that vacation pay, none of that. When you take off, that means your bread short for that day. So you got to be able to take that into consideration when that check roll in. And like at the end of the week, that thing ain't, it ain't gonna look like it would look if you had a full weekend. And sometimes, like I said, when you try and get at that bag like a cat, like me, I'm not even trying to take off. Because, first and foremost, I'm not where I would like to be right now. And I believe also when it comes to that bag, especially the financial bag, we always want more. Anytime we get to a certain point, we looking around first and foremost, seeing what we can invest in, seeing what we can do when we got a little extra, and then we find ourselves once again right back in the same predicament. Because just because we done made a little more money, that don't mean that it's time to go out and spend, invest. You might have to let that thing build a little bit so you can be able to stand the hit without feeling like you're gonna lose your shirt at the end of the day. But like I said, fam, that's just a little tidbit of what's going on the cable side of things. But I want to go on with part 3 of that little series that I got going on with religion versus life. It's part 3, family. And the first 2 parts we dealt with what religion meant to me, and also we dealt with what life meant to me. And now we're gonna get into the process. Because we all in a process, no matter who you are, what culture, what faith, what experience, you in some type of process. And look, whether you acknowledge it or not, that don't stop the fact that you're in a process. Just like the best way I can describe it a couple ways is when we first went to school, for those, got into the educational system, we started out 1st grade, 2nd grade, 3rd grade, all the way up to the 12th grade, so on and so forth. That's a process. Same way with when we go out into, starting our careers and getting involved with different companies. You start out at an entry-level position, then you end up, working your way up the corporate ladder, hopefully, getting to upper management. That's a process. So all I'm doing is describing a spiritual process. And first and foremost, to my brothers and sisters in Christ, y'all know, if y'all read the Old Testament scriptures, you know that in the Old Testament, God's people, who were the nation of Israel at the time, they went from Egypt to the wilderness, then to the promised land. Another process. We all in a process. And that just don't apply to those that are in the faith-based community. It's also a thing where those that may not be familiar with the scriptures and that whole experience of the children of Israel, you still can acknowledge the fact of being in the process. Those that claim to be, woke or aware or conscious at this stage in their life, they also was at a point where they considered themselves to be unconscious. And then you came to a point of consciousness, but then there's another step to me after consciousness, which is manifestation, where you actually reaping the benefits of the work that you done put in to get to the conscious level. Now it's a stage where you can reap the benefits and enjoy the fact of being conscious. And sometimes, sometimes we just stop at certain points. Sometimes we remain stagnated and we'll stay at a certain state. Like, sometimes we just stay in unconsciousness or rebelliousness or ignorance. We stay in that level and rest in it. And then sometimes we can reach, the second level, which is consciousness. And it also mimics the children of Israel's experience of the wilderness. If you look at it, family, those that are in, of the Christian faith, that once they got to the wilderness, it was a different experience. It wasn't like when they was in Egypt, because in Egypt, they had food that was prepared for them. They was eating somebody else's meal at the end of the day. And that's what happens when we operating in ignorance. We eating off of somebody else's plate. So those two are synonymous. But once you get into the wilderness, you might not have the same thing where somebody else is feeding you, but now you get a chance to go out and find your own food. And that's the same thing when it comes to being conscious. Conscious, you are aware of your likes and your dislikes. You are aware of where you're going and where you're not going. And it's the same way with the children of Israel's experience in the Bible. When they hit the wilderness, they could no longer depend on the benefits of slavery, which was considered to be the food that they ate. They were enslaved, but as a slave, they no longer, or they didn't have the ability to go out and find their own food. So now that they in the wilderness, it's an adjustment, but they had developed an appetite for that Egyptian lifestyle. And that's the same thing that happens when you go from unconsciousness to consciousness. There's certain benefits to being unconscious. You don't have to be responsible. There's a source of food that's provided for you based on, your ignorance. Because people eat even from an ignorant standpoint or from a rebellious standpoint. But when you, first and foremost, are concerned about your whole being and you looking forward to progress, you reach a stage in your walk where you get tired of eating off of somebody else's plate and you want to eat off your own plate. And that's where you get to the wilderness in your experience, or that's where you become conscious and reach a certain level of understanding. But finally, family, that last level is the promised land from a biblical standpoint and is manifestation from a conscious standpoint. You just don't want to be conscious. You want to be full. You want to be completely the complete beneficiary of your level of consciousness, whatever that may be. You just don't want to know things, but you also want to have understanding of what you know. So family, I'm going to end it on that note and just first and foremost, continue to reiterate the process. First and foremost, it begins with knowledge, wisdom, and understanding. That is the best way I can describe the different phases of consciousness. And then from a biblical place, it's Egypt, wilderness, promised land. Same thing. But I just want to encourage y'all, family, that first and foremost, those that are aware, those that are of the faith, those that have a spiritual hunger, I encourage you, first and foremost, to continue to allow your mouth to tell your thoughts what to do. And on that note, y'all have a blessed day, family.